Using Abraham as the exemplar of faith and justification, like the influencers are actually doing, Paul's going to show that the inheritance that was spoken about in Genesis 12 through really the rest of the book of Genesis, the inheritance must arrive to both Jew and Gentile by other than human means in order for Hashem to receive his proper acknowledgement. If you remind yourself of what's going on in Genesis 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, really leading all the way up to Genesis 22 if you want to capture the larger picture. But what's going on in the life of Abraham that's so important for Paul to bring out is that Abraham was promised all of these descendants, and Abraham was promised all of this land. But the problem was, Abraham didn't even have one. How could he arrive at many when he didn't even have one? Right? And in order for Abraham to have one, God had to step into the picture. You know what I mean? God had to do something miraculous. So the point I'm trying to make is, as I say in my commentary, the son of promise was Isaac. The son of promise was Isaac, and he was to be born not of human effort, not by striving to produce offspring with Hagar, like Abraham tried to do in Genesis 16. This is after Genesis 15 when God says basically you're saved. And this is before Genesis 17 where he gets circumcised. So it's not by striving to produce offspring with Hagar that I say in my commentary, but instead by divine fiat, viz. After Abraham and Sarah were past childbearing age. And that's why when we read about in Genesis 18, he's recovering from circumcision. He meets the three visitors in Genesis 18, and God promises him that a year later he's going to actually have Isaac. He's going to actually have a son. And it's already described there that he's past childbearing age, right? So we know then that even though he already has Ishmael at that point in time, Ishmael came about as a result of his sleeping with Hagar, and therefore Ishmael is not the son of promise. Instead, Ishmael is the son of the flesh. And we'll read a bit later on about this, how Paul turns that into a midrash in the next chapter in Galatians chapter 4. But suffice to say for now, what's most important for Paul, as I finish up my commentary here, what's most important for Paul's point is that in the Gentiles identifying with Abraham by faith, they had to remind themselves that Abraham's faith in God was centered on God bringing into Abraham and Sarah's life a son that they themselves could not bring about by their own effort. And therefore it had to come about by promise. It had to come about by faith, I should say. The promise had to be born of faith. And so, as I say in my commentary, the final sentence, likewise, as we look at Isaac in the life of Abraham, since Isaac was a miracle baby, right? He was brought about by faith. Likewise, the Messiah, who is the ultimate son of promise, of Abraham, the Messiah also would be born of miraculous circumstances, proving his connection to the antecedent theology that God alone can secure the promise for his children. End quote. So, for Paul, it all fits together airtight. You Gentiles who wish to be counted among the faithful of Abraham, you Gentiles who wish to be included in the promise to Abraham, you Gentiles who wish to be out from underneath the curse pronounced in the law against those who are covenant breakers, those who have spurned the covenant, those who have proven to be outside of the covenant that God made with Israel at Mount Sinai. You who wish to be counted among the faithful of Israel, who want to be part of the commonwealth of Israel, you Gentiles must place your faith, like Abraham did, in the promise, and namely, the promised son. You must identify with the promise. And the only way you can identify with the promise of Abraham is to identify by faith, the same way that Abraham reached into the faith of God by placing his faith on the son that was promised of God.